to start your day with a daily dose of integrity-based human influence. On today's Trajectory Tuesday, I'm gonna take the song, which I just jumped into right at the end as we were jamming out, and on an SOS on the emergency frequency of trajectory shifting. What is the one thing you know that you need to do to make a massive shift on the trajectory of your money, time, and magic? So as you let that question, dig into your subconscious, what's happening? It's Tuesday. Welcome. We're somewhere in November. I don't know what date it is, but we're here. Momentum is accelerated. We just had an amazing phone call with the future of the Unblinded coaches. Acceleration is present. Agreement is present. We're subjugating our egos. We're bringing significance to the bottom of our needs. And these are the type of shifts. These are the type of shifts that are going to make a massive trajectory shift to the future of Unblinded and what we all here on this call co-create together. So that alone is an example of a massive emergency trajectory shift. It is the lowering. There's 6 human needs. We're not going to go through all of them right now. One of them being significance. The ability to lower significance as your least needed need is a massive trajectory shift for the rise of your money, time, and magic. So Mr. Callaghy, what say you on whatever it is that you're thinking about? As we're here for you. We love you. You've been rocking with us. So what is cooking, SC, as you have the hoodie up? So I'm feeling the Yoda-ness of your energy right now.
Yeah, I would say the Yoda-ness meets the rockiness of we're in war camp right now,
Cool.
of things that are happening. So, in dealing with self-mastery and love and prayer. So everybody, your messages are just so appreciated. And I am leaning into faith. I'm leaning into believing. I do believe God makes all things work together for good. I do believe, I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I am believing super strongly that my dad's going to be fine, okay, which would be quasi-miraculous because on human levels, there are optics that, as you go down the list of questions, oh, do you have high blood pressure? Do you have, the optics on the checklist are not, these are not optimal checklist marks. So, and they do halves. So, but I'm choosing to believe in the miraculous. He had a very high fever last night. So, definitely intense prayers are necessary. It's very difficult because, in light of Corona, you're not allowed to be in the hospital at all. That's where we are in New Jersey. And so that is not easy. And I know people here, others have gone through this. Nicole went through this with her dad, and it was, I just can't, I couldn't imagine. And now I'm experiencing the dynamics, and it is really a crazy place, man. When somebody you love and care about goes through those doors into facing what we talk about in our questions, if you had the privilege of knowing it's your last day on earth, you had that privilege, what would you want people to be saying? What would you want to be happening? I had that feeling as my dad rolled through those doors, and you had to just let him go through those doors. And it was an unbelievable feeling, and not one I wish on anybody, but it's what we do with it from there. So I figure that a great place to lean on this Trajectory Tuesday is always in radical transparency and openness. And I try to teach from a place and share from a place of what is. So for me, what is present today, an honest evaluation is some of the ways that I have not effectively blamed my dad, and I have not effectively credited my dad. So something that may sound a little bit crazy that I don't talk about is my dad was involved in sales. And so one of the questions my dad asked me after the immersion, and he was hurt, was why I didn't speak more into the things that I learned from him about selling. And if I dig deeply, which I have, I think the answer is because there was a lot of unresolved pain. And I thought some of the ways that my dad engaged in influence were in ways that I didn't want to engage in influence. And that is in part true. but it's probably in a very small part true. So what I offer to you is a consideration of where is there with your mom, your dad, even if you didn't know them, even if you still have them, even if they're gone, with people you love and care about and close to, where are those like unresolved pains that may lead us to distort some things in our own perspective. And so I just want to lean into that a little bit as an example. So we are not here. I talk about a lot of people. I do not, I kind of run through it and say my mom and my dad. And truth be told, there are times that I say my dad in case he's like listening sometime. And there's like a little charge when I say my dad because there's unresolved pain. And so, and my dad and I have spent an enormous amount of time together. So this isn't like my dad has not been in my life. But there's things that I experienced that I have preferences that would have been different, right? I have rule structures that would have been different. But I think it's very fair as an example of how we can love unconditionally with boundaries and a step in live in truth. If I just share a little bit and hopefully it'll be helpful for you and it would be helpful for me. And I think it's a right thing to do for my dad, right? And I think it would be in service of everybody. So we are not here with Unblinded if not for my dad. And we're not here at Unblinded. And there's many on the list. My mom, my grandparents, my grandma Rose, his mother, Tony Robbins, my high school coaches, my aunts, these incredible matriarchs, right, that were there. Some of them like Zeused up to the nth degree, and some of them goddessed up to the nth degree. And my mom's sisters, like very different people, right? So when I say like my aunts and my grandmother matriarching, Nani, who many of you have heard of my grandmother Nani, my mom's mom, she was like Zeused up at times. Like she was certain this is what it was. And my dad's mom, Grandma Rose, is very like emotional and heart-centered. So my dad was actually a source of amazing physical affection. My dad hugged me. He told me he loved me. He was he and my grandfather were two of the most physically affectionate people in my life. And both had tremendous amounts of Zeus energy and tremendous amounts of goddess energy. So I had male role models that had an incredible ability to move back from their goddess and Zeus energy. Sometimes, it was interesting. Somebody said to Adam Gugino once, sometimes it can sound like Zeus energy is like Bobby Knight, and it's not okay if Bobby Knight slaps somebody in the face and yells and screams. And the answer is, of course it's not. Like, of course it's not. And that is not the Zeus energy of which we speak. But we do speak of the Zeus energy of like Coach Slazak, of like my dad, my grandfather, to like open listening. And my dad could open listening. My dad had an incredible capability, has an incredible capability to open the listening of people. And so some of the things that I would attribute to not living in the conformity and confines is my parents got divorced in 1971 when I was 1. And people did not get divorced at that stage with a 1-year-old. And if I'm effectively blaming my dad, it was such an unbelievable blessing. He and my mom couldn't be more different. And my stepfather and stepmother got to enter into my life very shortly thereafter. And these are people that had some of the most unbelievable impacts in my life. And so in blame and judgment and thinking of the circumstances and things would come up for me around that. But the blessings were mind boggling. Without my stepfather, I would not have been the athlete I was. He was the one that lovingly drove me in those ways. And my dad taught me other things. And my dad taught me how to have dreams, how to want to go to see places. My dad went to a high school that most of the kids that he went to high school with, it was an inner city level high school. And not inner city doesn't mean people of different colors. Inner city in Jersey City meant people who were poor, people who had difficulty. And these were Irish people and Italian people and Polish people. And it was ghetto-like. It was unbelievably painful, all sorts of different lack and scarcity. And most of the people he went to high school with were dead or in prison by the time they were 30. When my dad was 15, there was a gang fight. My dad had a collection of knives And he supplied knives. Nobody was killed, thank God, or stabbed, but my dad came very close to going away at the age of 15 through some of those dynamics. And so he was always, though, my dad, I've never seen my dad back down to anything. My dad's had a gun pointed at his head outside of a bar. My dad has confronted sharks, and these stories are my dad. He watched James Bond as a kid, and I think there's many great things, not as a kid, as a young adult. There's many things to learn from James Bond. I think there's some things to maybe not want to model from James Bond. Perhaps the level of alcohol consumption and some of his other approaches in life. But he was a person that could produce results, and my dad produced results. If you want a result to happen, give it to my dad. He would talk his way into first class on airplanes. He would talk his way into the front row at games. He would pay little and receive much. And those things bothered me. Like as a kid, they bothered me. As a kid, they made me uncomfortable. And as I look back at it, I think there's parts of it that I would disagree with, and they wouldn't be my preference, but was on display was an incredible ability to have self-mastery in the face of resistance, which is an unbelievably powerful and important skill set. When I was 13 years old, when it was a dream of his when he first saw the movie Dr. No of James Bond that I've shared before. I was named after Sean Connery. My dad and I both cried when Sean Connery passed away just a couple of weeks back. And, the idea of going to an island, my dad, when he married my mom, they went on their honeymoon to Jamaica. And this was in the late 60s, a James Bond place. And to have gone to Jamaica in the late 60s, having gone to Dickinson High School in Jersey City, New Jersey, was like going to the moon, like the moon. Like nobody had ever heard of any such thing. And my dad didn't go to college. My dad ended up in trucking and managing, then selling, and he had long hair and a long beard, and he'd wear a suit and had great clothes, and he was like James Bond and long hair, right? And he saved money, he made money, he found a way to create disposable income, like a beast, right? Not a rich guy, but like, a guy living in a small apartment, but always had cash, always had the right clothes, always had the right car. What I would call is like generation one inner city thinking and functioning, right? Like the ability to have the cash, the car, the clothes, the looks of the opposite sex, right? And those dynamics were super present. And when he took my mom to Jamaica, he felt like he just won the Super Bowl. He felt like he was James Bond, and he achieved his outcomes and goals in ways that were mind numbing and mind boggling for people. And he went to Tahiti, after he got, divorced from my mom. He took his then girlfriend to Tahiti when I was probably 3 or 4. And I mean, for a kid from Dickinson High School in Jersey City to make it to Moorea and to be jumping off and swimming into the abyss and over the wall, I mean, these are things that were unfathomable. And so, and these are things I haven't shared before because maybe I didn't think it was a great thing that he went with his girlfriend when I was 3 or 4, but that would be stepping into a place of blame or judgment. And the truth and reality of it is, he had incredible mastery over his own life and areas he didn't have mastery, for sure. But when I was 13 and we stayed at the Aquamarine in Barbados, where he was going to get married to my stepmom, Felicia, who's an amazing human being, and who also, has encountered a lot, being with my dad for all those years, right? When we stepped into that ocean outside of the Aquamarine on the beach in Barbados, and I put my head underwater with a mask on, my life changed forever. And my dad gave that to me. And it unleashed possibility. It helped me see beauty. When he introduced me to his friend, Mike Webster, who was his friend, because my dad had what was to me a very annoying habit of meeting people and talking to everybody. And quite honestly, want everybody to feel good. and have fun. And these are things that are so much a part of me. And maybe some of it showed up a little differently and I judged it and I worked hard. And I think part of my rebellion from my dad, I don't think this was a confront. I had intervention I had in Tony Robbins' house with him and Sage. And on the last trip, as part of my rebellion in life against drinking, against certain dynamics around men and women, have been a rebellion against my dad, and that rebellion, we all rebel, I think, in certain ways from our parents. And some of those rebellions have caused incredible things in my life. And I couldn't be more grateful. But because my dad met Mike Webster on his prior trip to Barbados with my stepmother, who was the closest thing to Tarzan of any human I've ever met, and he mentored me for a week in the ocean and about the ocean. At 13 years old, he took away my fear of sharks. He took away my fear of drowning. He took away my fear of dying in the water. He freed me of fear in ways that have been applied over and over and over. And without those lessons, I don't quit my job. I don't start my own law firm. And yes, I give credit to Tony Robbins as the tipping point, but the foundational dynamics have been imprinted in my heart and my soul around the absence of fear. I watched my dad take, pot smoking, Rasta dudes that were ticket scalpers jumping in the back of our car and selling tickets that he got through work and all of these different things so we could quote unquote have like beer, hot dog, and pretzel money. And we were supposed to be sitting in the last row of the upper deck, and now we're sitting in the first row. And yeah, I could judge, like, should he have done that? And, probably not. And but he did it for us, and so I'm going to let go of blame and judgment and think of all the things my dad did to give me an incredible life. Even if he didn't have all the money, he found a way. And some of those ways I would not agree were integrous, right? And I would not want to suggest replicating. But today I want to honor them, because we are all, if there's anything you're benefiting from Unblinded, my dad is fundamentally rooted into this technology. And he is a fundamental cause over these dynamics. And maybe I felt like at the immersion in January, it was just too much to unpack. And I didn't know everybody enough, and it probably was too much to unpack at that point. But it hurt my dad a lot that I did not acknowledge him in a more open and meaningful way. And I was so pissed at him. He's in his ego, he's in his significance. I was so angry at him. I was blaming, judging. And so while he may have been in his ego and significance, I was high in my blame and judgment. And I was not unconditionally loving my dad, right? I'm not saying I should have said more, but my anger, my upset and frustration, and Nicole saw that, and Mona saw that, and my mom saw it, Admiral Ferrando saw it, and I got myself together. It was on the morning of day 3. I was like, how could he be so selfish? How could he be in all his own stuff? At the same time, my dad was there before everybody else every day. And he has trouble walking. He has trouble with his body. And he was there every minute of every day and would not leave, sitting in those folding chairs. And so, when we think about our life and we think about people, Tony Robbins speaks into effective blaming. And I don't just have effective blaming to do. Effective blaming means when people did things wrong to hurt you. My dad did so many generous and unbelievable things in my life. He took my son Tyler weekly, or every other week, to see a movie. I took him, he took me, on trips all over the world to go scuba diving. I had the privilege of scuba diving with 3 generations, every single person that scuba dives. And I've caused, 50 people, 100 people directly that I've gone with to start scuba diving. They're in my dad's downline, right? They're in my dad's family tree of scuba, which he takes great pride in. My kids' friends scuba dive, and my dad caused that. I've been scuba diving with my father, with my son, Tyler, my daughter, Courtney, my daughter, Emma. We've encountered sharks together under the sea. How many people ever get to do that? When it started with a poor kid in Dickinson High School in Jersey City. A poor kid in Dickinson High School in Jersey City. That most of the people were dead or in jail by the time they were 30. My dad showed me what room service was at the Chateau Frontenac in Quebec when I was 6. because they figured out how to get my stepmom to become a travel agent. And so they got all kinds of deals all over the place. So, which I think was actually integrous. My dad was so resourceful, is so resourceful in every single conceivable way. And that resourcefulness and those big trials and jury verdicts, those resourcefulness to create the real raw receded in my dad. My mom was too. They were two unbelievably resourceful people, right? And my dad went to my kids' games. He went to the soccer games. He went to the baseball games. When my son got the game starting rally hit and what was the NJ.com game of the year for high school baseball in the state of New Jersey, when they overcame a 9-run deficit, my son's junior in high school, when my son Tyler had been struggling that season, he had an unbelievable sophomore, we were struggling that year. My dad stood next to me, had tears pouring down his face as I had tears pouring down my face as all that was happening. And as we knew what was occurring, my dad caused my ability when I was in the front row in 1986, when the Mets were in the World Series and had what was the greatest comeback in World Series history, the most impossible, down 2 runs in the last inning, and then extra innings, bottom of the 10th inning, nobody on base. Everybody had given up, but I didn't. Because I had seen enough at that point through the sports things we had encountered and games he had brought me to and things we had watched to still believe in the faith from my mom. And that I may have been the only person in that stadium, while I was scared and had tears pouring down my face, who believed the Mets were still going to come back. And as tears poured down my face, tears poured down his face, we have the unbelievable unique privilege, and we love the Mets from birth, and they had lost throughout all those years and craziness of my life. And to be there and watch that miracle happen together, it's like why when Corona comes and people are like, well, Unblinded's done, there can't be a real Raw. Yeah, and that's when my dad did drop F-bombs. He's taken me to R-rated movies when I was like 6, like The Warriors and other movies. But that's where that volcanic, like, F you, dude. F you. You're telling me what can't happen? Like, that energy is rooted in him. Like, F you. You're telling me that can't happen? Let's step up and let's go. And that is what causes results and causes leadership. Imperfect at times, but there's a formula. And Zeus energy is a part of it. And that Zeus energy, that certainty, that confidence was rooted in so many things I saw and have experienced and learned from my dad. And when the Mets won that game in 1986, and that was complete, the cameras came down upon me and my dad from an overhead shot of us screaming, yelling, going berserk, right? In the fulfillment of the impossible. And like, out of all those people, it came down upon us and about 30 people around us, like this overhead shot, and we're right in the middle of it. And it is those moments that are what my dad's life stands for. And in ways, by not acknowledging those moments enough, I've engaged in misportrayal at some level. The very misportrayal that makes me nuts if it comes anywhere near my life. And so my dad is perfectly imperfect. And as we're on this huddle, he, like many, is fighting for his life. I hold no blame or judgment in any direction for how we are where we are with Corona. It is what it is. And for some, it's pretty much nothing. And for some, it's life-threatening. How we reconcile all that around the economy and people, I would change nothing. But I am standing in belief that my dad is going to be absolutely fine, and it's going to stand as a testament to the power of prayer and the power of possibility, and he is fighting for his life. So your love and your prayers are immensely and greatly accepted, and I couldn't be more thankful for everything. And if you take anything away from today, it's to, 1, be self-aware and examine yourself and your beliefs. 2, to think about where perhaps you misportray anyone, right? Because I have done that at some level to my dad, and not done it by blasting him, publicly, but the stories I select to tell about my dad are more the ones that are rooted in shaping an image of some behaviors that I don't love. And the truth is that he has for every behavior I don't love, he has 50 behaviors that I want to have modeled and that I do love. And even if some of those other ones, my story about them was to give myself meaningful pain, and even if that pain would have been reasonable, it's still suboptimal and not the accurate truth. And third, is we have a choice every day of the story we make for ourselves, for the people we love and care about, and for the world. And the question always is, how is that story serving us? And my story is that life is simple, we can co-create in life simple, fun, and magical micro distinctions and frictionlessness that free our exponential abundance in money, time, and magic. And if a poor kid from Jersey City who went to a high school that was like the bowels of hell at that time could end up sitting front row in World Series games, flying first class, going to hotels like Jumbie Bay and the lifestyle's rich and famous, and however he figured out how and go scuba diving around the world, cause a son to be able to take and do the things that he's caused and grandchildren to be doing what they're doing. If all those things are possible for him, like what's available for you? What's possible for you? EG, what do you got, brother?
Well, Sean, this is just listening to you pour out your heart, your vulnerability, your openness is exactly why I'm here. And everything you've described, to be able to tie it back into as well, just the understanding of the formula to model what was the outcomes you were looking for, and for you to realize like you're not going to model everything, but with all that you've accomplished in your life, so much has to do with what he taught you. And it's just, I'm just so grateful that you are so open in your story. And I'm so grateful for your father and for just the understanding of, as I'm listening to you, I'm listening through the prism of what self-mastery, what is the process in which you've been able to get here through this story. And then you're in my opinion, one of the most influential people on this planet, is because this is who you are. And this is a lesson for us all to just be who we are. And again, Sean, thank you, and wish your father the absolute best. I was privileged enough to spend some time with him that weekend, and I think we connected in so many ways, and his heart was so clear and genuine and authentic. And please let him know that I'm praying for him, and obviously I'm praying for you and your family, Sean. So
thank you. Thank you, Fernando. Final, bro.
I see one of my favorite qualities about you is your ability to be an authentic, imperfect leader. It is such an example of what integrous leadership looks like. And as I sit here and I think about like how I want to love you, my like gut when moments like these happen is like to cry with people. And right now, I want to support. I want to remind you that the ship is moving, that you have strong warriors in place, and that access to a person to listen and not speak is there. As I just want to figure out how to love you. And thank you for once again being a model of what effective blaming looks like. And that has been a new word for me that I have really enjoyed, that I didn't have language for. And I'll end with this, for everyone, like what we're witnessing here is what the speed of self-mastery looks like. Sean's ability to reflect on what he said, his the vulnerability in saying, I might have misportrayed. That's powerful. And I don't want anyone to miss that magic, because it was just a little sentence It wasn't even like the main part of the story. And Sean, your ability to self-analyze, to shift and break through your own knowingness, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, we all have it, is yet again another example of what we can model. So I love you, and we're here. And I only have a few memories with your dad, speaking with him for about an hour at the event. And yeah, he is totally your dad. So back to you, Mr. Callaghan.
Final. My dad loves this movement. He could not be more proud of it. My dad cares so much about making the world a better place. I may disagree with certain aspects of how he goes about getting that message out there, but the cries of his heart are love for people. He was a child of the 60s in many ways, with a rock edge to it from the 70s. And he believes in making the world a greater place. And thank you for carrying that vision forward. Final, this past summer, my dad has a real hard time walking now. He's had really big issues with his feet and ankles. He's had a couple of surgeries, and it's really hard for him. So we had to get him like transportation up to the beach. He needs to like lean on me. With all of that, 74 years old, he just turned 75, and AG was out there, with it and saw it. My dad was out in the ocean with me on the wave break, on the sandbar, and I was surfing wave and come back, and he was looking to try to body surf a little bit. My dad was an amazing body surfer. He can't push off his legs, and he's out there in the waves, in the ocean for like an hour and a half on the break, on the sandbar in Long Beach Island at 74 years old, in poor health, in clearly horrific orthopedic health, right? Like no real legs, ankles, push strength, and just hung out with me for an hour and a half on the sandbar to be close, to be together, and to enjoy the waves. And that is what being present and living our life and standing as an example possibility. Because when we were out there at like 5:30, 6 o'clock, like even that day, there were very few people who ever even go out there, let alone a 74-year-old man in poor health who basically can't walk and is like letting me take off on waves and like assessing my ride and, being like, great job, and hugging each other and loving each other. And yeah, that is what an example of possibility about living life and being present is truly all about. So love you guys. Thank you for this. I hope you can live presently and realize that it's all just a story, man, and that the world needs you. Like the world needs you and needs your leadership. It needs mastery and awareness that there's a formula controlling the outcomes of our life, and you supporting bringing that knowledge and truth forward and make money. Because when you make money, people are drawn to you. It's maybe not the way the world should be, but make money so people listen and then give them your heart.